All right, well, we are back with the Avalanche Builder Spotlight, a series that we have to highlight the best builders, developers, founders, innovators, visionaries on Avalanche who are building real use cases and driving adoption on the Avalanche network. So we're here with Ravageur, who's the core contributor to Yield Yak, an OG DeFi protocol that's been an Avalanche staple for many years and been around the ecosystem for a long time. So we're excited to talk to Ravageur because he's got a great perspective on the years and years of Avalanche, but also what's coming forward. And so, yeah, do you want to introduce yourself and then we'll jump into the conversation?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Kyle, for having me on. Yeah. So I think I bridged over to Avalanche on day one as a user. So I've been, I guess, like a power DeFi user for over 4 years now, and I joined the Yield Yak team just a few months after coming on Avalanche as a user, and I kind of haven't looked back since. So I'm a core contributor there. I'm basically the only non-smart contract developer. So that means I guess I had a bit of a CMO, COO type role. So making sure that kind of strategically we're going the right direction, doing a lot of the marketing. We're a pretty lean team. That is part of the reason that I think we stuck around and remained successful. So yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. So tell us, or yeah, I guess tell us a little bit about your journey from, like, with your skill sets as a builder to getting connected with the team that you're working with at Yield Yak, and then how did you decide to build on Avalanche?
Yeah, so I think there's probably like my path was maybe a little bit unique, but maybe it speaks a bit to what we've tried to do at Yield Yak, which we're trying to build in the open, and pretty much everything that we build is open source, and especially in the early days when the project was starting, they tried to really build in a way where other people could contribute, and I started off as a user, and I was following along with their progress and their product updates, and I was really passionate about like what they were doing and how they were approaching things, and so I approached them and just said, "Hey, is there anything I can help with?" I came to them with some feedback myself as a user, saying, "Have you guys considered changing this, or have you considered looking at this?" And they thought it was good feedback, and I offered to help out with some of it, and essentially, next thing you know, I was essentially a full-time contributor a few weeks later. So I think to kind of tie it into the Avalanche experience, I do think that isn't entirely unique on Avalanche in the sense that it is quite an open ecosystem, and we've had a similar experience working with Avalabs where they're sharing progress with us out in the open. We're providing feedback on it, and they're making tweaks in real time to make sure that what they're building kind of matches the needs of developers and ultimately the end user. So yeah, it was quite like I guess a welcoming atmosphere that took me in, and it's part of the reason I stuck around, just because I felt the real, I guess, loyalty to the project for essentially taking a chance on me, and and I had a lot of respect for the way that they do things, which is not too black box, and trying to do things in a way where it's more about progressing the entire space, especially like on back then on a really nascent ecosystem, and I'd say the whole industry is still relatively nascent. So yeah, I think that's the right way to approach things for the type of project that we were, which was more of a DAO project that tries to kind of do things openly.
Interesting. Yeah, that's kind of interesting perspective. I didn't know too much about Yield Yak, that it was kind of that DAO approach, that like collective, we're doing this together. It's a little bit less like a company.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to these approaches, and I know that there's been a lot written about DAOs and the successes and the failures of DAOs. Probably more about the DAOs that don't work. And I think one thing that we try to keep in mind, I think I call it a loose DAO, in the sense that a lot of the values and the precepts of those are kind of embodied in how we do things, but we're not trying to run votes on every incremental protocol decision and try to get consensus for where the button should be. And generally speaking, we're trying to put our faith in good developers and trust them to make the right decisions, and listen to community feedback. So I think I'd say that's like the ethos that we try to do, is have your ear to the ground to your users, but also put faith into your builders and empower them to make decisions. And ultimately, if they lead us astray, you should hear it from your users.
Yeah, it's a really good approach. I think that ties in well with kind of the next question I had, was just what's the experience been like building on Avalanche? Anything from, the technical architecture and how the network is always changing, and Yield Yak and some of the other products you're building could go along with that. But also there's the community element and being amongst a group of people who are around the chain for a long time, or working on different projects that you're integrating and kind of putting the pieces together. What's the experience been like for you and the team?
Yeah. So I guess on like the technical side, the architectural side, probably Avalanche doesn't get enough credit for just working, and especially in the early days, I'd say like I was an heavy Ethereum DeFi, heavy Ethereum user and DeFi user, and I probably what brought me on was like the original kind of like high gas fees and like basically the chain being unusable for DeFi, and Avalanche was kind of an oasis for simply just working and being fast and cheap to use, and that I think that like fundamental use case hasn't changed in the sense that you never hear about downtime or like major upgrades that cause issues that like set you back. And we have tried building on other chains in the past, and I can say genuinely that Avalanche has been the best experience, the best developer experience we have, and also just just being able to keep a real relationship with some of the developers from Avalanche, from the foundation, that like just feeling like you're not totally anonymous, and there is someone that you can talk to kind of behind the scenes, but you can give feedback to and have kind of a line that's certainly not the case everywhere else. But the community for sure is the thing that stood out to me the most and still stands out to me the most. I think on most other chains they will be focused on one specific thing. So there's some chains that are really strong on DeFi, really strong on gaming, really strong on meme coins, etc. And there's different kind of pros and cons to each approach that they take to this. But I'd say Avalanche overall is really well rounded. So like if you're looking to build and be able to tap into, especially if you're building like infrastructure or something that taps into multiple different segments of the industry, Avalanche is incredible just because you have DeFi, you have community coins, you have culture stuff, you have NFTs, you have gaming that's getting a big push, and especially with the L1 ecosystem, which I think we'll be talking more about. There's an opportunity really to like spread your wings and touch on many different things from a single project. So, working at Yield Yak, I've literally had exposure to every like corner of the crypto industry in the past few years, and it's like been a great experience to work with projects from all these different sectors and hear their perspective and just learn. So.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of touch on. You mentioned kind of like the way that Avalanche leads in kind of technological innovation. That could be, there's obviously pros and cons of building on any technology. Is there anything about the Avalanche tech stack that you really love? And is there anything that's been more challenging to work with?
Yeah, so I guess it's topical because it's what we've been looking at and working with pretty much almost exclusively the last 6-8 months, and that's the L1 infrastructure. So that's the way that AVAX L1s are going to talk to one another, and this vision of kind of many chains feel like one really resonated with us, or really resonates with me. Again, as someone, I'm a pretty heavy DeFi user. I use Ethereum, I use L2s, I use Avalanche, and the reality is that most of the L2 ecosystem feels very disconnected from the other L2s and from Ethereum as well. And the vision to allow these like app chains or L1s to prosper and develop, to allow them to have flexibility over kind of the rules that they want to put in place for security. They want to be permissionless, how they want to decentralize, to allow this kind of flexibility while also having a vision that they can be truly interconnected and have seamless communication between themselves, other app chains if they want, and the C chain, which we kind of view as kind of like the liquidity hub, and seeing that come together through ICM, Avalanche Interchain Messaging, and ICTT, which is kind of the new token standard for tokens moving across this architecture. I think for us and for the developers, that has been a bit of the like step change moment of like, wow, okay, this is real, and the actual potential is pretty unique in the industry, and just for us hugely exciting, which is why we've been building on top of it, and hopefully we'll have something that showcases that and highlights the like the beauty of the architecture.
That's a perfect segue because for the next question, I'd love for you to tell me about Tesseract. Tell me about what it is, how it works, and the vision for the product.
So Tesseract, you could call it many different things. You could say it's a trading platform. You could say it's an aggregator. We're calling it like a liquidity marketplace. So the best way to think of it is that Tesseract will look at all liquidity across the entire Avalanche ecosystem. So it's looking at the C chain. It's going to be looking at hopefully all of the L1s or as many L1s as want to be connected to the rest of the ecosystem. And you can be a user in any of those ecosystems on any L1 or just on the C chain. And Tesseract will essentially take a snapshot at any moment in time that you want of all the liquidity that is there and make a decision based on what is the best for whatever that trade or transfer or swap is. So it really opens up kind of, I want to say like countless potential, but kind of boundless opportunities in the sense that it can open up stuff like cross-chain lending from one L1 over to the C chain and back in a matter of seconds. It can, you could be making a swap on the C chain where there's potential kind of arbitrage opportunities where there's liquidity on this L1 and then there's liquidity on that L1, and Tesseract will swap to one L1, make a trade, swap to the other, or transfer to the other L1, make a trade, and come back to the C chain all in a matter of 3 seconds. And from a user perspective, that can be basically abstracted away. And from their perspective, they're just getting kind of the best price for their trade. But it's a lot bigger than that in the sense that it's a real building block for app chains and L1s that don't want to have to manage their own liquidity or worry about deploying their own DEX for their own token. So I can be a gaming L1 and I want to focus on building my game, but I have an in-game currency. And rather than having to worry about managing that liquidity or managing a liquidity pool on my own L1, you can just put that liquidity onto the liquidity hub, onto the C chain, and deploy Tesseract onto your L1. And then you immediately just have access to that. So from a user perspective, I have, they've onboarded USDC as an on-ramp. I want to swap from USDC into the in-game currency to buy something in-game. And Tesseract will just immediately look at that USDC, scan the entire ecosystem for liquidity for the gaming token, transfer it, swap it, transfer it back, again, in the matter of 2-3 seconds. And the user will be playing the game. And so I guess just we see it as kind of a fundamental tool for users in terms of benefiting from the total aggregate of the ecosystem, but also a huge kind of building block for builders that want to kind of kickstart their app or whatever product they're building and not have to worry about liquidity. And also not just that, but be able to build an app and that is immediately bootstrapped with the entire liquidity and the entire kind of DeFi powerhouse of the C chain. So I mentioned kind of cross-chain lending, like that's an amazing example where I'm creating some kind of let's say strategic vault, and I want to lever up on that vault, but I can't. There's no lending platform on the L1. Well, there's plenty of lending platforms on the C chain. So using ICM, I can just literally just tap into that liquidity, basically run a cross-chain lending swap transaction. Again, in the matter, I think we've been running it at about 6-7 seconds, and I managed to add leverage to my strategy, or I can deleverage. But yeah, without getting too much into specifics, the potential is pretty huge, and Tesseract ideally should be kind of the connecting piece, and it's built on top of ICM and ICTT. So any L1 that deploys those standards onto their L1 can deploy a Tesseract cell, which we can maybe get into a bit more, and essentially just immediately benefit.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think you brought up a lot of good points about one of the things that I think is probably one of the strongest selling points about the Avalanche L1 design and the vision for it is how many things can be built out of the box. Like there's going to be a lot of businesses, enterprises, consumer applications, sports teams, entertainment brands. A lot of these companies they're gonna find the benefits of launching services and products on blockchain they don't have Web3 dev teams. They're not going to hire big engineering staff. So a lot of this stuff, the more that can come out of the box, the better. Whether it's all the tooling that you can use, but offering something like this out of the box kind of messaging protocol like Tesseract to connect all these things, I think is really important.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. I think that is the challenge right now, right? Like if you're, everyone's talking about tokenization and like, tokenizing everything, and that's great, but there's like a lot of baggage that comes with that right now, right? So yeah, if you're trying to actually run your own L1, yeah, the actual, let's say like an actual a non-Avalanche L1, the considerations you have to make and the tech stack you need is overwhelming, right? For most kind of for most people. And what Avalanche brings is, I'm sure you'll have other people on here to talk about how quickly you can launch an L1 on Avalanche in a few clicks. And but that's kind of step one, and then one of the multiple steps is hopefully going to be Tesseract, which essentially solves like a really fundamental problem, which is like any kind of interchain token transferring that you want. Tesseract basically solves for you, and you can use the Tesseract front end. You can build your own front end, and we're building all open source, so you can kind of tweak what we're building to meet your needs, and it's quite a flexible solution as well.
I feel like this is a perfect example of like the ethos of Avalanche is creating the foundational systems so that these things can be built and that things can be easier and quicker to market. But it's the ability for people like you and your team to then take that and build on top of it and say like, here's another critical infrastructure piece that's going to help the proliferation of this vision, and not just have labs doing it all themselves, and not just like, here's all this stuff you just have to use it as is. It's like customizable. You can add this, put some flavor on that. I think that's like the beauty of it.
Yeah, so how Tesseract works, so it uses fundamentally ICM. So this is the interchain messaging system where essentially relayers are passing messages between the C chain and L1s and other L1s. And these messages can be quite complex, or they can be quite simple. They can be, say, this token has been sent here, release this token on this L1. And so the opportunity that we saw with Tesseract was that, okay, if we can pass these complex messages across L1s, we essentially can pass a message that has multiple types of instructions. So we can pass a message to one L1, it receives the message, executes a transaction, and then passes the next part of that message to either back to the C chain or to another L1. And what we quickly realized is you could have this like incredible kind of hub of networks that are speaking one to another, and you can do incredible things. So some of the things that we're seeing with Tesseract on testnet is, you can be literally making a swap that passes between 3 L1s back to the C chain, 5, 6 step hops where we're, maximizing the benefits of liquidity across all these different kind of disparate ecosystems, in a matter of seconds. And yeah, I don't think that exists anywhere else. And I'm not even sure I'm not even sure if that was the purpose originally of the ICM system, but it's just something, like you said, that kind of unlocks this, and other people are going to be able to build their own solutions on top of it. Tesseract is just one kind of take on this. But yeah, that's what's exciting, that we basically were able to build this on our own. Obviously, we've been collaborating with Avalabs, but we're building it ourselves, and yeah, that's kind of the beauty, the flexibility and kind of openness of the approach.
That is like a perfect example of it may not, like the original design and vision couldn't have thought of all the ways that it could be used. There's no way things that are happening today could not have been thought of 3 years ago. Like just the idea of certain businesses that are on chain, all the stuff that's happening with like the adoption of all these like traditional financial systems and stuff. So yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. So I wanted to also ask, like, because of that, like you mentioned before, like endless possibilities, has there been any really like specific or interesting use cases for this kind of message passing that's come up while you and your team are like testing, or while you're brainstorming? Like, what if like Starbucks built their own L1 and like people are paying for coffee across all these chains? Like, any like random fun examples where you're like, man, if we could make this happen, that would be so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the stuff that is pretty mind-blowing, is like the potential for like how efficient the ecosystem could be. So if you had some like really high powered trading platforms that were on their own L1 connected to the C chain, the possibility for having like extremely efficient markets, more efficient than even kind of some of the largest centralized exchanges, that's occurred to us, and it's like potentially extremely exciting. But then I just think like the simple use cases of I guess the stuff that for me like speaks to me the most is like any new product that wants to launch and onboard a user with fiat into USDC. The fact that by deploying a few contracts, they can just choose to tap into anything that's happening on the rest of Avalanche, and it's like up to them, right? So they can choose like, okay, we're gonna deploy USDC and AVAX, but we only want to deploy that. So like there's this like really nice element of building an open ecosystem, but the individual, I guess, like pieces retain flexibility and like protection, right? So the thing that we were concerned about is like if we're like trying to scale this and like create Tesseract into like this, everything is connected, you'd be worried you're introducing like multiple points of failure, right? So like, oh well, what if like this L1, something bad happens on this L1, or something bad happens here? The nice thing is that you can kind of sandbox a lot of the risk there into the L1's decision, right? So if they say, oh yeah, we're going to deploy all these tokens and we want to tap into tokens everywhere, they can, right? That's their decision. If they just say, oh, we just want to be able to, make sure that users get the best, are able to swap between AVAX and USDC, they can just do that, and they offer the users that and no more. And you really kind of like isolate the security concerns and the risk. So I mean, I guess like the complexity and the simplicity at the same time. The complexity in the sense that Tesseract as a whole will be this really kind of complex beast that is touching on so many different ecosystems. But from an individual product perspective, it's a really simple proposition, and it's not complex at all for them. It's deploying a few smart contracts, and also they can choose exactly kind of what they're looking for. So it's a bit of like a pick and mix. You're able to kind of pick and choose like what you want from it, and that is exciting. But in terms of the use cases, to be honest, we've been so focused on like solving for like the simplest use cases, which we've already gone through. But I suspect that as we roll this out and hopefully gain traction, there'll be some use cases that come up that we haven't even thought of.
Yeah. I can think of some that will come up with some of the other big kind of L1 approaches that are happening, specifically around ticketing, man. I'm so excited about like, I think ticketing is just ripe for disruption. And I think it's not going to take a long time for us to really start seeing some evolution in how tickets are bought, sold, secondary market, how they're verified, content that can come with it. Like you said, like just being able to kind of maybe run an oracle on the C chain that's pulling in real time pricing, and then there's an L1 that's like selling the tickets, and then you can message past an NFT from a game, and like all of a sudden you're like you got collectibles tied to your tickets, and payments are all on chain, and then there's like a history of your concert going or sports events. I think Tesseract could really.
For sure. Actually, one that comes to mind that we've been speaking to is a Bitcoin L1 that's going to, the main use case will be to finance physical Bitcoin mining. And one of the things that Tesseract can do is essentially connect Bitcoin miners to huge Bitcoin liquidity, right? So if I'm a Bitcoin miner, like my main concern is basically having access to liquidity for my Bitcoin that I mined and being able to kind of manage risk in that way. And essentially, you can have this L1 that's supported by Bitcoin mining revenues. And the benefit to the miners is that they immediately have access to BTC.B liquidity on the C chain from the L1. So that's just an immediate, like for me, I'm not, I'm kind of a DeFi guy, and I love that stuff. So yeah, that's a super exciting one that comes to mind that actually should be arriving in the not too distant future.
Is that the one with Baller?
It's the Plan B one.
Oh, nice. Okay, wow, yeah.
There's another one. There's two, I believe. Yeah. So
the
one
BTCL1 thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a BTL one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but there's Plan B as well. I think they have slightly different value propositions, but I'm a bit more familiar with the mining one.
There's so many things I'm discovering every day, right? Okay, so I got two more questions. So the first being, what's a piece of advice or something that maybe you wish you knew, or something you would tell someone that's maybe just getting started building on Avalanche for the first time? It could be tech related. It could be like, make sure you get to know these folks. like, what's a piece of advice you would give to a new Avalanche builder?
So I think the advice would depend a bit on what their goals are and what they're building. But I think the generic piece that I would give to every builder is to make sure you're using the product. So like not just your product, but you're using other products, so competitor products, especially if you want to collaborate with other projects. I would just get into those communities and start using their products. And the reason I say that is that you're able to kind of speak their language. And the most common thing you see when you're trying to like develop relationships between projects is they only see their side of it, right? They don't really have like this like self-awareness of like what the other project's priorities might be or what they're up to. They're kind of just like it's been one-way traffic, like oh, like this is what we're looking for, and like it feels a bit like yeah, it can feel a bit stale as an approach. And the relationships that we've developed with other builders that have been the most productive have always been when we're using their product, they're using ours. There's like a certain cross pollination that's happening in terms of yeah, just getting your feet wet and understanding the ecosystem. So yeah, I guess like so maybe to summarize it, I think it needs to be a bit tone deaf if you're just kind of in your own box working on your own project all the time. And the best way to get out of that kind of out of that box is to use other projects, even if it's your competition. And yeah, it gives you kind of a better language to approach it, and you'll learn a lot as well. And then the other piece of advice I definitely would recommend is to try to drown out some of the noise on on social media, on X, and try to kind of stay focused on what you're doing. And it's such a it's such a tricky balance with the industry both moving so fast. So you need to be able to be flexible and willing to pivot, but you also can't be pivoting to the latest flavor of the day, which changes every week. You need to have some conviction. You need to believe in something. So yeah, it's finding that right balance of kind of seeing where the industry is trending, but also having some kind of resolve and drowning out a bit of the day-to-day noise that you get if you're just kind of scrolling through Twitter, which hopefully you're not doing too much if you're building. But yeah.
Yeah, it's such a weird predicament because there's like these competing thoughts of you got to kind of put your head down and build, and there's just so much noise and there's so many things that are going to like derail you or distract you. And then there's like the flip side of it is founders need to be more vocal and the people building it need to like promote their own products and like founder led marketing and like
Exactly. Well, that's the thing now. Like, it's like, yeah, why even bother tweeting from the actual project account? It's all it's founder led marketing, and it's like, well, if they're doing that, and maybe those people aren't like best positioned to actually be engaging in those conversations, it can get messy in a hurry. So yeah, we try to find the right balance there of being vocal about what we're working on, but not like not not getting too deep into the weeds of it. Try to like keep it kind of even keel, and yeah, easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for the founders that are more kind of like operators, but for most early founders, you're also a builder in some degree, whether you're a dev or you're doing some other like business development or front end stuff. And I always see these comments that are like, how come like they'll like go at a founder and be like, you don't tweet as much as this person or that person does, or why aren't you more active like this person? And I always think in my head like, I'd rather my founder be like building, doing research, talking to people, like going out, getting partners. Like unless you're like the visionary, which some ecos or projects have, I kind of would rather my founder be like grinding than tweeting necessarily. Uh, Maybe they're telling their story in a certain way is good. Telling your story in a way is good, but like I don't want my founder to be a reply guy. Like
Exactly. I think that is the balance of like getting your story out there, highlighting your successes, but yeah, not like reply guying, not getting into like arguments with other projects that like provide no value, and if anything, just probably make your project look weaker, if anything. So yeah, that is it's definitely like a new wrinkle that wasn't on anyone's radar 5 years ago, but is very much like an important piece to it to now, for better or worse. Yeah.
and exists in no other industry. I've worked in marketing a long time. I worked in the agency space in entertainment and music, and I'm like, I've never been a part of the industry where like all the projects fight each other and like you're supposed to be like chronically online. It's just crazy.
I think it kind of comes from the fact it's such an attention game, there, and there's so much some of it is because of the structure of it. Like people are fighting for grants, and people, obviously, like there's a lot more blurred lines in terms of like what's allowable in terms of kind of shilling your own project. And this has kind of unlocked this. I guess it can be a bit of like a nasty side of the space, which is just this kind of it feels like a bit of a race to the bottom in terms of the attention game. And there's it can easily be frustrating, I think, if you're kind of a quiet builder just building, seeing kind of seeing a lot of the attention go that way. And I mean, if there's any piece of advice I could pass on, it's that you just need to ignore that. You need to just accept that there's not always going to be, it's not a fair industry, in the sense that you're not always going to get the attention you deserve. And ultimately sticking around and surviving a thing to build is probably that will be the sign of your success. Just because most of the, let's call it like noise, most of the people creating most of the noise, aren't around in 2 years. Like there's a pretty high churn rate when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just thinking back, what was relevant and popular 2-3 years ago, just even on Avalanche.
Yeah, exactly. You look at the top 15 projects in Avalanche 4 years ago. It's very different than it is now, right? So, and it's like that in every ecosystem. So.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, last question, and it's kind of relevant to what's going on today and around this week is, I think that the biggest advantage that Avalanche has was it was designed from the beginning for widespread adoption. And adoption could be, it's a buzzword, right? Like everybody kind of uses that term to describe various things. But I think when I think about the concept of real use cases being built on chain, and that's across almost any different industry, right? It includes community coins, it includes NFTs, it includes DeFi, it includes institutions, right? Like it's designed to be able to bring that adoption on chain in any way possible, whether it's like one primary fast, cost efficient liquidity hub chain, building your own L1s, all the tooling available, something like Tesseract that connects everything together. What does adoption in blockchain mean to you? Or where do you see adoption happening? Where would you like to see more of it happening?
So for me, I kind of come back to my roots, which are in DeFi. But I think the things that are not unrealistic to expect is that we see a lot of subsets of the financial industry coming on board onto Avalanche. So an example that hopefully Tesseract will be part of, Forex, is a massive opportunity on Avalanche. Just imagine that you have like L1 specializing on certain stable coins or certain pieces of that industry, which is a massive industry, and being able to move back and forth first, in seconds for cents. That's something that I could see, my friends using on their phones and that have no concept of, or the blockchain, or don't care about Avalanche or the underlying tech. They just want to basically be able to move from pounds to euros for the best rate. So like I guess I'm looking for like a moment like that where you start seeing like Avalanche being used without people knowing that they're using it. And I don't think we're that far away. Gaming's obviously another one, like stuff like Off the Grid and stuff like that, where people are just going to be playing because they like the game, not because they care about Web3. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And on the DeFi side, like I think there's a bunch of use cases, like RWAs is another one, but yeah, Forex, stuff like that. I'm hopeful that we're going to see breakthroughs there in the next in the next year or two.
Yeah, I agree. Forex is a huge opportunity, massive addressable market. It's already happening, right? Stable coins are the first product market fit of blockchain. And yeah, I think the real missing piece is the interoperability, is the ability for these things to have their own execution environments, but be able to talk to each other and pass value along. So yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. Ravageur, man, it's been great talking to you. It's been great to catch up. It's been awesome to see your journey, you and the team's journey from the Yield Yak to the Tesseract products, and just being around the Avalanche ecosystem for so long. So appreciate you coming and sharing your builder story with us. Anything else that you wanted to share, or where people can kind of follow along?
Well, thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, Tesseract, hopefully by the time that people are watching this, Tesseract will be live on mainnet. So yeah, my shameless plug is to give it a try. And if there's anything that you see on it, that you have any feedback or things you'd like to see to make it kind of your home for moving tokens around Avalanche, let us know, because we're definitely building for you guys. Like we want this to be the product that you're proud to use. So yeah, please get in touch on X, Discord, wherever you can find us.